Tyler Morgan is a partner at BFG Partners, and he's one of the most active early-stage consumer investors in the country. Tyler has spent more than a decade underwriting the next generation of food, beverage, supplement, personal care, and tech-enabled consumer brands, including early bets on category-defining winners like Ollipop and Vacation. This conversation goes deep into the real mechanics of modern CPG venture investing, how the K-shaped economy is changing consumer behavior, and why premium brands can now scale to 50 to 500 million without ever touching most of America, and what aspirational consumption looks like in categories like RTD beverages. We break down why some ingredients like fiber create platform-level opportunities, how brands like Ollipop and Vacation captured cultural zeitgeist, what product differentiation and defensibility really looks like in 2025-26, why founder ruthlessness and humility may be the most underrated combo in consumer investing, what seed and Series A actually looks like today, guardrails, caps, expectations, and red flags, and how BFG underwrites channel, contribution margin, SKU expansion, and finally the rise of AI tools actually improving P&L in retail, merchandising, and trade spend. Welcome to In the Money, an exploration of whether you can still make money in D2C and CPG. We talk to some of the most interesting $5 million to $50 million founders, operators, investors, and acquirers to ultimately answer the question, is D2C and CPG still a good business? Hope you'll enjoy the show. Tyler, in pre-recording, we were talking about the impact of the K-shaped economy. So I think let's just start there because it's such an interesting place. We're talking about specifically the acuteness of the K-shaped economy. And then that top end, how big some of these premium brands can now get, even though they're 2x, 3x, 4x more expensive than the mass market competitor.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting to think about from an investing standpoint, but also just from a consumer standpoint in terms of the democratization of healthy food. And when I say that, I mean, I think our stated goal and mission as investors is to invest in better for you businesses, and hopefully those businesses get bought by strategics, which then fold them into their portfolios and make those products available to more and more people. I think we're seeing a place with the K-shaped economy, as we were talking about, where the purchasing power of really affluent, wealthy people is becoming so great that you're finding niche aspects of certain food categories where you can grow a brand to 50, 100, 150, 200 million in sales without ever really touching 80% of the American consumer base. And it's kind of a moral question, but it's also a question of where do you look for growth as an investor when some of these brands that were previously thought to be too niche to be investable are really growing categories at price points that historically have been somewhat off limits.
And do you have the conversation internally of like, how healthy can this premium or affluent customer be? Like, hey, it's all well and good when market's at an all-time high, but if everyone has a 20% contraction in the equities portfolio, are they still buying the premium price product?
It's a great question. I think the answer is everything is cyclical and there will be ebbs and flows. I think that, and to get more direct about it, I think that there are categories that are viewed as aspirational within the consumer standpoint. And as such, people are going to be okay with getting a little treat that is kind of above what they're typically used to paying for because they saw their favorite podcaster or they saw their favorite celebrity buying it. I don't know why this popped in my head, but I'm going to say it. It's going to be embarrassing. There's a line in The Devil Wears Prada where it's they're talking about art and fashion as art, and they say it's art that you get to live your life in. And then he goes to say no, well, not you specifically, but everyone else. And there's extrapolations to consumer broadly, right? Where if I think this is particularly true in RTD beverage, for example, where it's seen as a real social symbol, like what the latest celebrity is drinking or what your latest creator is drinking, where there are certain categories that are really aspirational and people look up to people that use those products. And so I think in certain categories in particular within this K-shaped economy, there are real spurs of growth that should be worth chasing, even though we'll see a downturn in the economy eventually.
Yeah, Starbucks has certainly lost a little bit of its halo, but I think I remember like that they were kind of the anti-GFC symbol. That like people were still going for $4.50 lattes even during a downturn.
One look at Blue Bottle, that's for sale. Nestle bought that for 700 million. I'm acutely aware of that one. Nestle was buying Blue Bottle right as they were buying Chameleon from us in 2017, and so we saw that firsthand. And yeah, everything is cyclical, and even a mega deal like that can kind of go sour for what those third wave coffee chains look like today.
Maybe a fun place to segue would be like, are there a couple of brands at BFG that listeners may know of? And then maybe specifically like what got you excited about them? And then what were some of the signals that you saw?
Yeah, of course. Well, hopefully there's a couple that folks may know of. I think to point to one, Ollipop, we were one of the first institutional investors there. I guess it was a mix of luck, timing, being at the right place at the right time. We had known the founders from their previous venture. We had a thesis around fiber, still do, still think that that's kind of one of the great growth areas in consumer. And we're introduced to the founders. They had gone through a really nice rebrand with the product. We thought about it, and kind of the way we underwrote that product is, okay, can this be the new way that consumers get their fiber away from the traditional Metamucil kind of powders? It would be a lie to sit here and tell you that we underwrote the business to what it has grown into. But sometimes it catches that cultural zeitgeist and kind of it's lightning in a bottle a little bit. So certainly that one has been really fun, and there's been a couple more that I can point to as well.
Yeah, let's stick with Ollipop for a second, and specifically about fiber. I'm curious, like, do you think that the Ollipop consumer is specifically aware of the fiber content and the fiber benefits, or is it just like, hey, I'm aligned with better for you at the highest level, and this tastes like soda?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a great question. Something we've continued to ask ourselves. I think for the first 3 years of the business, that is what they leaned on, and something that really differentiated themselves even from competitors like Poppy. Cold supply chain, product didn't degrade. And I still think that they're more natural consumers gravitate towards the product because of that. I'd say when you get to be, a $500 million business, you're accessing enough Americans that, I don't know, probably the majority of them are drinking it because they like the taste of the product and they think it's healthy, which it is. But they're not purposely seeking out the product because of the fiber content, I don't think.
Well, let's talk about another one or two.
Yeah. I would point to Vacation sunscreen. That's been an interesting one for us because it's really one of the only businesses we backed pre-product. We're generally not pre-product investors. Got introduced to the founders actually through a mutual friend. I know someone that was on this podcast earlier this year, Anna Whiteman at Coefficient, and was one of the greatest pitch decks that I'd ever seen, and felt like we needed to be a part of it. And what they have done really well is just world building. And in a consumer category where, unless you're very medicinal and take a clinical approach to what you're doing, your mode is brand, and they are really second to none, I think, within the personal care category in terms of world building, bringing their community into the product production process, and creating this aura and just real vibe that the brand exists inside of. And I think it's, again, that perfect storm. They're kind of bringing clinical efficacy of the sunscreen and melding it with that 70s, 80s, 90s nostalgia of when sun care products were fun.
If you think selling to your domestic market is good, wait till you see what happens when you truly go global. That's where Passport comes in. Passport is a full-stack global commerce partner built for ambitious brands that want real international scale without the headaches. They can help you launch and ship in-country in key markets such as Canada, UK, EU, and Australia. Or they can help you ship cross-border. With Passport, you get smooth international shipping to over 180 markets, fast, DDP ready with branded tracking, high-touch customer support, and top-tier delivery success. Your compliance, taxes, duties, and customs handled end-to-end. No surprises at checkout or customs, just clean cross-border expansion. They'll even handle your duty drawback claims. And you get localization and storefront adaptation, local currencies, shipping rates, payment methods, and tailored checkout experiences so your brand feels local no matter where you ship. Passport works with most US and UK based 3PLs and with top brands like Ridge, Hexclad, OneSkin, Dole's Kill, and many more that have already turned Passport into their growth engine for global sales. So if you're thinking global, if you want to scale into new markets, unlock demand outside your home country, and do it the right way, go check out passportglobal.com. I still remember, at least when they came to market, where like half the consumer investors and operators I knew had on their LinkedIn profile that they were like an ambassador. Like I was like, what is going on? I couldn't tell if this was like a gimmick or like this was actually a real brand selling product. I want to know that story. And then second of all, like there's one thing in having kind of a unique brand, a unique voice, and then there's something else of having market pull. And so like maybe the question is like, of all the things that you've seen now, are you getting better at pattern recognition of like, okay, I can see three cool brands, but this is the one that will actually get traction in the market?
I wish I could sit here and tell you yes. Uh, I'd like to think that I have gotten better after doing this for what, almost 11 years now. I'm coming up on my 11th anniversary of BFG. Um, it's hard, and I think the rules are changing a little bit. I think the consumer is less loyal than they ever have been. There's more consumer switching. I think trend cycles are faster than they ever have been. I think when we think about like the dissemination of culture, it used to be very kind of top down. You watch the news and that's where everyone would get their news from. You read a magazine and that's where you get your page 6 type news from. And now you're getting culture from 40 different creators on 3 different platforms, and you can go deep into any niche that you want. And there's enough people that are interested in all of those things that, you could follow a creator with 5 million followers, and I've never heard of that person in my entire life. And so there's just this fragmentation of culture where it becomes like pattern recognition and getting to consensus on a deal or a brand, whether it has $500 million potential. I think it's just harder than it's ever been, because it's never been easier to get a brand to 5-10 million in sales. And that's where, and the level where we're investing in pretty early seed to Series B, kind of that's the businesses we're looking at. And so you kind of have to really kind of get past the noise to the signal, which is hard.
Maybe, we're wrapping up the year. Maybe we'll talk about state of the state for 26 and like, what does a seed stage CPG kind of consumer goods business look like today? And then what does like a Series A, just to put, I know it's all in, changing, but just to put some guardrails around it. And specifically, like, what are you looking for at the seed stage and thus what are you looking for at the Series A stage?
Yeah, I would probably define seed as revenue generating. So probably not pre-revenue, although we're seeing several seed deals that are pre-revenue. Maybe they have a PO commit from one retailer, so things like that. I would say kind of classic seed stage for us is probably that 1 to 4 million in revenue. You have at least one channel that's working, whether it's Amazon, direct to consumer, retail. Maybe you're testing another one. And generally you're going out to raise 1 to 3 million. Used to be at a 5 cap, then it was a 10 cap. Now we're seeing plenty of 15 to 20 caps.
Yeah.
But I'd say that's generally kind of what we'd say a Series C looks like right now.
And then what about an A?
Yeah, I'd say in general over 5 million. You are in one channel doing really well, probably, hopefully at least another one. Maybe it's Amazon, maybe it's direct to consumer. And you're going out to raise 3 to 10. And you've moved past like a founder and one other person that you hired to help you do whatever you needed to do, and you probably have, either a head of sales or a head of growth. You kind of got one or two other people around you to kind of take some of the load off your plate. I'd say that's generally what we're seeing in Series A.
Whether for seed or Series A, let's talk about maybe the middle of that pack. A $5 million business. It's strong. It's got good first year data in retail, or it's got good first 18 months in D2C. You're looking at three of those this week. What gets you excited to take that to the pot? Which one of those do you pick to take to the partner meeting?
Yep. No, it's a great question. Realistically, if I got three of them, one of them would be a no right away. I didn't have to talk to the founder for one reason or another. Too concentrated on Amazon. You're selling a durable, which we don't necessarily do. We're kind of only fast-moving consumables. One reason or another, I'd say in order to kind of really get to excitement of one of the two that are left, I'm talking to both brands and understanding the founder and the founder dynamic. At that stage, it's so important. It's really the factor.
And how do you quickly underwrite, like, hey, is this like a 8 out of 10 founder or like a 12 out of 10 founder?
I wish someone would codify. I wish someone would codify this. And we've tried. You can put all the AI into it you want, but people are always going to be people, and they're always going to surprise you, whether it's good or bad. I would say that you have to be a level of kind of ruthlessness to be a real great entrepreneur. I think that you need to be okay delegating eventually. I think at first you can do everything, but I think that there's great founders that fizzle out because they want to control every piece of their business, and I think really great founders delegate and hire the right people around them. I think you have to know your business inside and out. I think I ask a lot of detailed questions, and the best founders know their numbers in and out, and they know every facet of their business. And I think you have to be okay knowing what you don't know. It's that kind of perfect mix of humility with arrogance, honestly, which it's a very thin line.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Why do we love Numeral? Well, here's the good, the bad, the ugly. The good is that over 2,000 e-commerce store owners just like you use them for sales tax compliance, including brands like Graza, Ridge, Gruns, and 8 Sleep. The bad is that none of us got into this to spend a ton of time on sales tax and admin, which is why Numeral is able to help you in 5 minutes or less get full coverage, deal with registrations, ongoing filings, and compliance. It just all happens in the background. And the ugly is that not a lot of store owners know that sales tax is actually personally guaranteed. Said another way, that the states could end up coming after you personally if you're not on top of it. Even being a modest $5 million store owner, you could have Nexus in 20 to 30 states. Again, Numeral helps you stay compliant, and they even guarantee their work. That's why we love them. Go and check them out at numeralhq.com. Let's talk a little bit about product. Recently had an investor on the pod that said, look, like, I can't do protein anymore. Like, it's super hot. I know it's going to win. I know market share is going to continue to grow, but I just can't do it because, like, there's, all the form factors, so competitive. Yeah, how do you think about product and differentiation? And then also kind of fast followers, like, any kind of moats and ability to copy?
Yeah, it's all I think about, really. I think with protein specifically, it's easy to fall into the trap of say, look, it's overplayed. But there's growth everywhere in protein right now. Yes, some categories, there's way too many brand launches. I don't think every product needs to have protein in it. But when you think about what creates an acceptable price increase for a product, an increase in functionality, and you think about, let's use coffee. If I want to pay $5, if I want to get someone to pay $5 for a coffee instead of $3.50 for a coffee, adding 10 grams of protein is by far right now the best way to do that, because people see the value in it and they're saying, okay, there's satiety there. There's longevity. It fits into my health routine. It fits into my workout program. Um, and I don't think that's can be said about some of these ulterior categories, like maybe even like creatine right now, or collagen to some extent. I know we realize that collagen is a protein, but it's not a complete protein. And so I think that there's a lot of ways that protein can continue to grow in a lot of different categories. But just in general, as I'm thinking about product differentiation from like with my investor hat on, we do look for true product moat. And I say that like, are you solving a real pain point for a consumer that doesn't exist in the market today, whether that is through an ingredient, whether it's through a price point, whether it's through a format. Um, and if it is easily replicable, are you doing enough on brand and community that if someone creates the exact same product, they're still going to have a hard time doing what you're doing?
Sticking with that example of coffee added protein, a handful of them 18 months ago, now there are 50 of them. Do you need some kind of IP mode, or is it like you said, like, hey, we're okay with it being a crowded category, but either if you've got first mover or you've got the community aspect, we're okay with making a bet because we want to make a bet in that category, and then we're just going to rely on their ability to execute?
Yeah, I mean, if we're sticking with this product specifically, is there IP around your formulation or ingredients such that you have a protein to calorie ratio that exceeds any of your peers? Or is there a mouthfeel that you're able to generate because of your special protein blend that makes your coffee creamier, more easily digestible than others? That's kind of one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is, I think you can use what is a Throne Sport coffee or something. That's the football player that I forget his name. We can,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a good example. Like, I actually have no idea how that business is doing. And I'm not going to throw shade at other consumer brands, but like, unless that celebrity is like all in, and that's pretty much they're a co-owner and they're working, they're going to buyer meetings with you, it doesn't necessarily matter all that much. And there has to be really good kind of community market product fit for those kinds of products. So, I think there has to be a moat, whether it's IP or whether it's your access to building community and consumer love. I think one isn't necessarily more valuable than another in most consumer categories. I think things like personal care, clinicals, things like that are becoming much more important to be a true science-backed product. But in food and beverage, anything's reverse engineerable. You're putting your ingredients right there on the side of the product. So, at the end of the day, your brand and your community is your IP.
Is there a brand, either in portfolio or not, that you think has set a gold standard, or someone that you point to as, hey, they've done customer engagement or community really, really well?
Yeah, I'd say Vacation is one, but we kind of chatted about that, so I'll go a different direction. Oats Overnight. It's really a kind of a masterclass in community building, taking what I would call a very unsexy category of oatmeal and building enough consumer love for your product that they have over 100,000 people in a private Facebook group now that just talk about Oats Overnight. And, the subscriptions are such that you're kind of getting 24 to 48 bags of oatmeal in your order. And a lot of times you're getting new flavors or you're getting a flavor in development. That's one thing I'll talk about. So every month they'll give you a flavor, what's called an FID, a flavor in development, that every consumer gets in on top of your subscribed orders. And there's a QR code on the back, you can scan it and you give your feedback on the product. It's too sweet. It's not enough flavor. It's too spicy, whatever. And then they'll do one of three things. They'll either scrap it, they'll make tweaks, send it back to folks, or they put it into regular rotation as a new SKU. And because of this, people really feel like they're like have ownership in the business. Like, I helped make this. And then B, you're getting so many bags of oatmeal that people are like, oh, you know what? I really don't like the toasted honey nut cereal. Does anyone want to trade me for cookies and creams for my toasted honey nut cereal? And there's like a secondary marketplace for these products, like just like oatmeal in a bag.
Wow. Is that
But
happening within the Facebook group, or are
yeah,
they like
yeah,
helping? Yeah.
yeah.
And it's
And
worth,
it's not like moderated by, like, Oats will jump in there to answer some questions, but it's not like a top down. It's like very decentralized, just people talking about Oats.
and it's worth someone to ship 6 bags of honey nut to receive 6 bags of blueberry.
Yeah, it is. And,
Yep.
I think there's so much like loyalty that people want to tell their friends about it. And, they have a loyalty program. So if they do, they'll get $20 off their next order and things like that.
Yeah, no, incredible. And in the Facebook group, what else is happening? Are people is it mostly around ingredients and mixes, or?
I mean, there's like, like any Facebook things, it probably starts around your favorite flavor. I think it's just like any other corner of the internet, but it's centered around this conversation around Oats Overnight, which I think it sets the stage of people just talking about the brand and the product.
Yeah, no, incredible. Let's talk a little bit about margins, Tyler. How important is margin structure out of the gate, or is it something that you think can be fixed later? That's the first part. And maybe the second part is, I'm sure you're seeing personal care brands with 75% product margins, and then cold chain brands with less than 30% margin. Yeah. So how do you think about that when you're looking at the full spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, it's all contextual by category, right? But I think the overwhelming sentiment that I wish to get across that, I think a lot of founders don't understand, we'll probably see, I don't know, 1,200, 1,300 decks this year. Volume does not fix margin. You can't just tell me in your deck that once you're selling 10 million units and, right now you're selling 1 million units, that your margin jumps 20%. It's just, there's some categories where that's true. Once you go from, wrap cans to printed cans, it's kind of one of the greatest example of real kind of margin breaks in RTD beverage. But for the most part, if you're not coming to me as a seed stage business with a fully loaded gross margin above 30, hopefully 35%, then it's going to be really tough for me to get excited. And it's all category dependent. Frozen's going to be tougher. But then, we think about it from a contribution margin standpoint, right? And so it's like, I think Costco is an interesting channel where you're taking a little bit of pain on the Costco margin, but there's a lot less trade spend, right? And so if their contribution margin is 20%, oftentimes it ends up being a more profitable channel than your direct to consumer channel, where maybe you're getting a gross margin of 50%, but after fulfillment, shipping, and direct marketing, that contribution margin looks more like 5%. So, we think about it contextually, and we think about it in terms of on a per channel of trade basis. We ideally, if you're coming to us as a Series A, don't necessarily expect this as a seed stage business, but we love to see your budget broken out on a contribution margin basis by channel. So what does it look like at retail, specifically by what retailer? What does it look like on Amazon? What does it look like direct to consumer?
AI. Everyone's talking about it, and you're worried you're getting left behind. Meet RichPanel, an AI-first customer support platform that's built for one thing: making support faster, smarter, and cheaper for e-commerce brands. Something you can actually feel smarter about using. RichPanel combines a unified inbox across email, chat, and socials, a customizable self-service portal that customers actually use, and Sidekick AI, powered by GPT-4, which learns from your past tickets to suggest on-brand replies. Does it actually work? Well, with RichPanel's guarantee, you get guaranteed 30% cost savings when you switch from Zendesk or Gorgeous, 30% automation to reduce your ticket volume, and a no-risk guarantee that if RichPanel doesn't deliver those results in 60 days, you get a full refund. That's why top brands like Ridge Wallet, Jones Road Beauty, and Pella Cases are already using RichPanel to save hundreds of thousands in support costs. Time to start letting AI work for you. Head to richpanel.com and start your free trial today. Real savings, real automation, real AI that actually works. There's a funny debate, meme, conversation with consumer brand founders, maybe more so e-commerce founders, of like, why would anyone bother starting a consumer good business that isn't an 80% margin VMS or beauty high replen subscribed business?
I mean, I in some ways I'm like, true.
Yeah, yeah,
Honestly. Uh, but because consumer is a massive category and people still want to eat frozen food. And there will be winners, right? And I think if you come up with the right product with the right brand, you can build an amazing business. I mean, think about, Kevin's. That is an unsexy business, and probably hard to stand up from a logistics standpoint. You're sous videing meat. You're probably shipping frozen, slacking it out to retailers. And, people talk about the kind of overall price tag of that business on a kind of, whatever they thought it was, 4x retail or 4x revenue, but that business sold because it was highly, highly profitable. We heard kind of 25 to 30% EBITDA margins in a
yeah. Wow.
category really hard to be that profitable. So there are windows and pockets in companies that are making it work. And forever until the end of time, there will be innovation in all of these categories that does it. Some categories are certainly harder than others, but because of that, there's a lot less people starting frozen businesses than there are starting supplement businesses in a gusset pouch selling online.
Are there categories or subcategories that you're particularly interested in going into 26?
Yeah, I think I mentioned fiber, anything kind of fiber, um, brain health, mental performance. I think we're going to continue to see a lot of that. There's a lot of talk of longevity. Haven't really understood how that translates to consumer yet. What I'd love to talk to is folks that are finding ways to incorporate this biometric data that people are starting to get from Aura and Superpower and Function and Eight Sleep, and like how do you make a consumer brand that works within those guidelines? And it's hard without true personalization, or maybe you've come up with a way to truly personalize something, but consumer is such a broad and hard category to build personalization into that. That kind of thing really interests me. So anyone doing that kind of thing.
And personalization hasn't really worked at scale, right? There was the of care that did went to buyer and they shut it down.
Yep. Yeah, care of. I think there's an example like Pros in hair care that was kind of ended up working. I think I'm gonna air quotes personalization there. They end up with a product suite at retail that's like, you choose this and then you choose this and then you choose this. Like, you have curly hair, you have brown hair, you want volumizing, you want, your hair is greasy, your hair is dry. But on food, like, not really. Hasn't really happened. Although we're seeing kind of like a resurgence of um, direct to consumer, like food box businesses, sometimes pre-cooked, sometimes cook yourself, but within these kind of more niche food tribe categories again, that are, some of them are highly profitable. I know that, I think like Cook Unity just did that. Maybe it was like Morgan Stanley, 250 million. 10 years ago, obviously there was that boom splat with all of those businesses that never really went anywhere. And I just think that compression of time is so real. People are really busy again. And if they can get their macros and something that is easy to put in a microwave for 5 minutes, I think that there's value in that for the consumer again. And I think that logistics have gotten to a place where maybe it's a little bit more profitable for these companies to build like that.
Yeah. Is there a tactic, a channel, a piece of tech that's working especially well for portfolio companies right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of all over the map. I've been looking obviously deep into AI. I think that there's a couple things that really interest me. I think if there's vertical AI solutions for a very specific piece of your business that really there's like a direct ROI immediately. I think that's been working well for some of our brands. This is talking my own book, but I do think it's an incredible business, Confido. It's a AI solution for cash application, trade spend management. Basically takes unstructured data, structures it, and businesses see immediate ROI within their kind of AR and AP. So that's something that's kind of been really working well. One that's not in our portfolio, but I think is a very interesting business. Businesses using kind of AI to disrupt merchandising. Merchandising and store audits is one of A, the most important pieces of a retail business, and B, too expensive, frankly. There's a business called Heddle. Founder's really smart. And using, camera intelligence, photo AI, and kind of gig economy workers to kind of go into stores, do store checks. Now they're starting to do some merchandising. Takes, a $20 store check to, I don't know, it's like $3.50 a store or something. So that's been, he's only in one or two retailers right now, but I think he's expanding.
Yeah, David Rogers, a good friend of the pod, and you're, I think, the second investor on the pod that's mentioned them, so they're doing something right. What's your biggest piece of advice for founders heading into 2026?
Whew. Yeah, that's a good question. Don't listen to me. Maybe is that good advice? I'm always continued to be impressed by like the level of execution of founders in general, right? I think I have an tremendous amount of respect for what they do. Compared to what I do. But I think that if I were to give advice, I'd say you never know what the capital markets look like. If you have interest in your business, raise the money now. It's going to take you twice as long as you think, even if you have interest in the business now. So start from a position of strength. Don't wait until you have 3 months of cash left. Start when you have 12 months of cash left. That would be where I'd start. We can definitely go deeper probably if I just have time to think about it.
And you mentioned that BFG still was very active this year, and I imagine will be so next year.
Very active. Yeah, working out of our third fund. We're only 30% deployed out of that fund. So a lot of dry powder and really looking for fast-moving consumable brands across food, beverage, supplements, personal care, beauty, pet, home goods. And then, something unique we do is we do invest in the Confidos of the world. So vertical SaaS tech and services that touch consumer in one way or another.
Tyler, as we head towards a wrap, is there anything that you're seeking from listeners? You're obviously looking to talk to brands, operators, collaborators, anyone else that you're looking to meet?
Yeah, I mean, I think the coolest part of my job is talking to people that are smarter than me, and I'm always trying to learn. So if you have a service business, if you have a new company, if you have a new piece of technology, if you have a way to connect some of these longevity tools to a consumer brand, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear of the unique ways that people are using AI, like actually in an efficient way and not just coming up with songs about cats. Yeah, always my DMs are open.
Amazing. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on and look forward to next time.
Yeah, really appreciate you having me.